Hello, I'm Dr. Christopher Davis, and I'm here today with Dr. John Ivy, and we are going to talk about all things performance, all things nitric oxide, all things period. So, John, thanks for being here.
Pleasure to be here, Chris.
I wanted to start with just some of your background in the sport performance world, and give us a little bit of background. I want to know more before I ask specific questions, but give us a little bit of background about you in the sport performance world.
Yeah, so I was a high school and collegiate athlete, and one of the things that intrigued me was why one athlete was better than another. And so I studied exercise physiology in college, and then went on and got a PhD in exercise physiology and biochemistry. And, that gave me the opportunity then to study sports performance and the differences in body type and, cardiovascular health and so forth that relates to sports performance. But then I got into the nutritional aspects as well. What type of nutrition actually benefited sports performance, what type of supplements, and not just sports performance, but also recovery from exercise and what enhanced training adaptation. So how can you improve as an athlete by consuming a proper diet, but also proper nutritional products?
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about how we translate that performance in athletes to our general population? I'm sure there's some translation, how we could translate that nutrition part of it. How do we optimize nutrition, even if I'm not an athlete? How does the work that you did in the athletic world, how does that translate to just being the best version of yourself for optimal longevity nutrition-wise?
Yeah, so I think, when we look at the athlete, an important aspect usually is cardiovascular health in the athlete, and when we, particularly in endurance events, we're looking at the factors that improve endurance performance, such as maximum oxygen consumption, which is controlled by maximal cardiac output and the delivery of oxygen to the muscle tissues to generate energy, or ATP. We also look at factors that affect what's called the lactate threshold, which determines the level at which an individual can exercise at a certain percentage of maximum oxygen consumption. So the higher that percentage, the longer an individual, or the higher intensity an individual can maintain over a prolonged period of time. And the third benefit or aspect is really exercise efficiency. And the first two, you can train, you can increase your VO2 max by training, you can increase your lactate threshold by training, but exercise efficiency doesn't seem to be something that you can train. But you can take certain supplements that will do that. And those are supplements that will raise nitric oxide levels. So taking something like Superbeat Sport will increase that exercise efficiency. So what that means is that you can generate more energy per oxygen consumed, and you can also do more work per utilization of ATP, or energy. So you're more efficient at
more
working.
Energy per amount of oxygen molecules that you use is your exercise efficiency.
Right.
Can we talk about the role of nitric oxide in the VO2 max in general? So the maximum oxygen consumption. That's a tool when we talk about our general population. One of the things in my patients, I use that in every one of my patients as well, because it allows me to know what their overall cardiopulmonary fitness is, right? If we're looking at my overall, how healthy am I? If there's one tool that I think is incredibly helpful, which most doctors don't do, is looking at their cardiopulmonary the cardiopulmonary exercise fitness testing. And so how does nitric oxide help in the delivery of oxygen to the tissues?
Yeah, so that's an important point. I think from the standpoint of taking what we know that helps the athlete, we can translate that to the general population. So as we get older, the cardiovascular system becomes less efficient. And one of the reasons for that is the inability to generate the nitric oxide that we could generate at an earlier age. And nitric oxide plays a tremendous role in the cardiovascular system. You know, it increases myocardial contractility, so you're better able to pump blood from the heart, you know, which is the key to increasing maximum oxygen consumption. You know, the greater the cardiac output, the greater the oxygen delivery to the muscles, therefore the greater the VO2 max, our maximum oxygen consumption. The other thing that it does is that it increases mitochondrial efficiency, as we talked about, so you're generating more ATP per oxygen consumed. The general population, I think, by taking a nitric oxide supplement such as SuperBeat Sport or another product that Humann has, Neo 40, is that it's going to increase your vitality. You're going to feel, you know, more energetic during the day, less lethargic. You're not going to fatigue as early in the day. And it also, nitric oxide has an important role in the processes within the brain. So nitric oxide is involved in cognition and learning, mental learning. And it, you know, if you have sufficient nitric oxide levels, you're probably going to get less mental fatigue as well.
Yeah, no, less brain fog and things like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Talk to me a little bit about, I know Humann has a relatively new product. This is probably one of my favorite products, the Glycocalyx, that you had a lot to do with the formulation of that product.
Right.
Can you tell me a little bit about the role of that product in our general population, but talk about that with respect to the athletes? I don't think we've talked about that before. Do you think there's a role for a Glycocalyx product or in athletes?
Yeah, I do. You know, when you look at the Glycocalyx, what that is a micro-thin polysaccharide membrane-like structure, hair-like structure that's on the endothelial cells that line the blood vessels. And one of the things that Glycocalyx does is that it reduces shear stress against the vessel walls, so it prevents damage. When you think about an athlete that's training really hard several times a day, you know, particularly the elite athletes and all, there's a lot of shear stress on the arterial, on the vessel walls. Right. And I think that maintaining and that large shear stress can actually damage the Glycocalyx. When you do that, then it brings about a number of problems, you know, and in fact, the onset of atherosclerosis has to do with damaging the Glycocalyx. But the athlete is putting a lot of shear stress on the blood vessel walls and all. And I think by taking a supplement that supports the Glycocalyx could, you know, be quite beneficial, most likely.
Yeah, to help with that whole recovery. That's that whole concept of exercise typically being this, what we call a eustress, but when we kind of overdo it, that exercise becomes more of a distress to the body.
Yeah, right. You can overtrain, and definitely overtraining can create a lot of problems.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You mentioned SuperBeat Sport a couple times. Can you tell me the differences? What's different? What's added to SuperBeat Sport that makes it different than the regular SuperBeat?
Yeah, so SuperBeat Sports is a little stronger portion of nitrite in it. Then it's basically the same thing as SuperBeat's, just stronger.
Okay.
And so it has the same effects that, you know, if you were double or triple the amount of SuperBeats,
okay,
you
so
would
just
have
higher doses of the nitrates.
Just higher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you guys do clinical studies on the SuperBeat Sport? Have you done?
Yeah,
Okay.
we've done studies on that.
And looking at VO2 max or maximum oxygen consumption, is that what the outcomes were? Or what were the?
Yeah, so in the studies that we've done have actually been studies that have looked at endurance cyclists, and we had them doing high-intensity interval work. Because it's actually been shown high-intensity interval work is one of the things that is most beneficial for increasing VO2 max and raising lactate threshold. So we had, in one of the studies, we had individuals take SuperBeat Sports before the trial or a placebo. So they went through both treatments 1 week apart. And what they had to do was do high-intensity interval work. So they exercised at 130% of VO2 max for 45 seconds. And then they cycled it at 50% of VO2 max for a minute and a half. So that was a recovery period. And we looked at the number of intervals that could be completed on the placebo and on the SuperBeat Sport. And we found that there was a significant increase in the number of intervals that could be completed and total work that can be completed when on the SuperBeat Sports versus the placebo. We also found that it raised the lactate threshold by 7% in these individuals, which is really significant for a trained athlete. And we also found that we looked at muscle blood flow. And so during the high-intensity interval work, the being on the SuperBeats allowed for a better blood flow under this high-intensity pressure when the muscle is really contracted. You usually are blocking blood flow, and this allowed for improved blood flow during that high intensity. And then during the resting intervals, blood flow really increased much faster, and the recovery response was much faster as far as oxygenation of the tissue. So it was better oxygenation, and therefore that was one of the reasons that they could exercise for a longer period of time or do more intervals.
And that whole concept of the exercise efficiency was improved as well. Delivering
Exactly.
more oxygen, delivering more ATP, more energy with a specific amount of oxygen. So that's actually really cool. That's actually interesting when it comes to, again, I try to make this translation to our general population who may be listening. And I think that's really cool because we really think about, when you think about your health overall and how important our cardiovascular system is in supplying blood everywhere, right? Our brain, our kidneys, our eyes, every organ system. So if we can improve the oxygen delivery efficiency, whether you're an athlete or not, I mean, you can see how there's some inherent benefit in being able to deliver more oxygen, deliver more energy, more oxygen with the same amount of, blood supply, delivering more to the tissue with the products, the SuperBeats. So let's talk about SuperBeats in general. I mean, I know that's a product that you really like a lot. Can you tell me about just SuperBeats in general and kind of why? And it's the #1 recommended supplement by cardiologists, and I think that's an interesting title to have. Can you tell me a little bit about your opinion about that, and how did it get that title?
Yeah, well, I think it got that title because the product works. And we've done a number of clinical studies on SuperBeats and looking at its effects on the cardiovascular system. So we've found that individuals that are hypertensive or pre-hypertensive taking SuperBeats significantly lowers blood pressure, and whether you're hypertensive or pre-hypertensive. We found that it improves endothelial function and muscle and blood flow. And as I said, if you use SuperBeat Sport, even during exercise, your muscle contraction, you're improving blood flow. I think what most people don't understand is that when we generate energy in the body, it's not like it's at this one source and the energy goes out to all of it. Every cell has to generate its own energy. So every cell has to be delivered the appropriate amount of oxygen and the appropriate nutrients. And by raising nitric oxide levels appropriately and maintaining that throughout the day, then all the cells in the body are being nourished appropriately. And so whether you're exercising or not, you still need to get that oxygen and nutrients to every cell.
I like. Let's do this for a second. Nutrients. Let's talk about other nutrients that are important in the delivery of oxygen to our cells. What other nutrients do we need from a dietary perspective, nutrition perspective? What do you see commonly that people may be lacking from a nutrition perspective today?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that individuals can do nutritionally is eat large amounts of green leafy vegetables, which have high amounts of nitrate in it, which then can be translated into generating nitric oxide. But you need, 3 servings of high amounts of green leafy vegetables, or something like beets that have high nitrate in it. to get sufficient amounts. And most people don't do that. Something like the Mediterranean diet or the DASH diet, extremely well. If you do it properly, you're going to get plenty of nitrate for nitric oxide production. But most people, like I said, don't do it. So that's where supplements come in. Make sure that you do get enough nitrate in the body to generate the nitric oxide that's required.
Right. Now, what about all the people who are listening to this and they say, but wait a minute, I thought that nitrates and nitrites were bad for you. How do we explain that?
Yeah, so that goes back to studies that are, from the 1970s and 80s, in which they gave high amounts of nitrite to mice and rats, and showed that it could cause colon cancer, other gastrointestinal cancers, and so forth. But in actuality, if you look at the epidemiological studies of today, there's very little evidence for that. And in fact, when you think about it, individuals that have diets that are really high in nitrate, such as the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet and all, it actually reduces the risk of cancer, particularly colon cancer and so forth. So I don't think there's any real strong evidence that taking in dietary nitrates or supplements that contain nitrate for generating nitric oxide is going to have any detrimental effect.
Right. I actually tried to do a little bit of a deep dive on this myself, trying to understand more about if there is a detrimental effect of the nitrates and nitrites. And I kind of found the same thing, but I did find this explanation. And I'm not sure if this is supported by any studies or not, but it's the conversion of these nitrates in specific sources like meat sources that convert it to S-nitrosamines that actually has the higher risk of developing cancer. So the nitrates themselves are not really the issue.
Right.
It's being converted to S-nitrosamines that becomes the problem.
Yeah. So the nitrates in bacon or processed meats and all that, when they're heated, then it can combine with the different other proteins and form these nitrosamines, which then can be detrimental. The other thing is that particularly if you're taking in the nitrate supplements or vegetables that are high in nitrate and all, you also have a high source of vitamin C, which prevents that nitrosamine formation to occur.
Right.
And all the products have vitamin C in it to prevent that.
Good. All right. On the horizon, okay, any big ideas about when we talk about cardiovascular health? Any thoughts that you been putting together as far as things that we should be looking into, other ideas as the science around vascular disease evolves, or any new things that are on your horizon?
Well, we have a product called Glinocalyx, which we talked about a little bit. I think it's a tremendously good product. It activates nitric oxide synthase for generating nitric oxide. It also elevates hydrogen sulfide, and hydrogen sulfide is really important. It potentiates the nitric oxide effect, but it also increases mitochondrial function. All right, so it has that aspect of it, and then it has fucordin in it and a melon extract that supports the glycocalyx. So it has fucordin, which comes from seaweed. It has sulfated polysaccharides that make up the glycocalyx, and also inhibits an enzyme called heparinase, which breaks down heparin sulfate, which is a major component of glycocalyx. And so when that starts breaking down, then you start losing the glycocalyx. The melon extract contains superoxide dismutase, which is an antioxidant. It removes free radicals from the body, which can destroy the glycocalyx as well. And it's also part of the glycocalyx itself.
It's kind of interesting. So what Dr. Ivy mentioned about the polysaccharides or the fucoidins that are in that product, it's interesting. As I looked into the literature on fucoidins, which are very similar to something called heparin sulfate. In fact, the antithrombogenic or anti-clotting effect of the fucoidins in studies in vitro or mouse studies. They're actually stronger as an antithrombotic than actually the heparin was itself. So
Right.
pretty amazing product, a natural product when it comes to blood clotting issues. And I think that as I look back now in retrospect, and I won't even say retrospect, with respect to COVID and microclotting issues and knowing that that's associated with the glycocalyx being damaged, right? There's no better product than having a glycocalyx lining product with these fucoidins to prevent these microclots.
Yeah,
right?
and that would have been a great product when we had that
Yeah,
COVID.
exactly.
It would have been a great product. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Dr. Avi, thank you. This has been great. As always, I think a good, candid conversation. And so thanks for being here with us.
Oh,
Appreciate
I
it.
enjoyed it very much. Thank you very much, Chris.